How has your father shaped your life? That's the battle Spider-Man, the Green Goblin, and Vermin fought 35 years ago. From the works of Carl Jung and Franz Kafka to a fight for the very soul of a hero. By the end of this video, you and Spider-Man will never be the same. I'm the Caped Clinician, and this is the story of the spectacular Spider-Man, The Child Within. The Child Within is a 6-part saga, unfolding within the pages of the spectacular Spider-Man in 1991, written by DeMatteis and drawn by Sal Buscema. It's driven by trauma. It's a quiet, dark and psychological story, and we explore that immediately with the first character we follow in part 1 of The Child Within. In part 1, Up From the Depths, we follow Vermin as he's escaped from Ravencroft Asylum. Now it might seem at first like Vermin is a prisoner, but he's actually a patient, and Dr. Ashley Kafka is trying to get through to him, but not through to Vermin, the monster, but through to that child within, Edward himself. We understand that Vermin escaped, and Spider-Man is furious. After the trauma of Kraven's last hunt, Spider-Man sees Vermin as nothing but a monster, and while Dr. Ashley Kafka disagrees, Spider-Man swings out into the night, determined to find Vermin and take him down once and for all. And as Vermin hides in the sewers, he sees a young boy, and we finally get to understand that Vermin isn't really a monster at all. The boy guides him to Vermin's childhood home, and Vermin finally vows to take revenge on his father. But why does he want revenge in the first place? Vermin's character is actually rooted in real-world psychology. The concept of the eternal child was first proposed by Carl Jung, and then later expanded upon by Marie-Louise von Franz. This concept refers to someone who exists permanently within a childlike state. They're unable to take responsibility or agency over their lives, and they're beholden perpetually to their family dynamics, specifically their relationship with their parents. Vermin, acting like a monster, but also almost like a toddler, a childish character, is reflective of the real-world concept of the eternal child. In part 2, Wounds, we see Peter, Mary Jane and Aunt May visiting the graves of Richard Parker and Mary Parker, characters that we rarely talk about but are integral to this story. And Peter's trauma from Kraven's last hunt manifests itself again, as he sees Vermin crawl out of the grave of his dead father. Traumatized, Peter leaves the cemetery in a hurry. We cut to Harry, who's being tormented by the ghost of Norman Osborn, telling him he's weak, he's a disappointment to the Osborn legacy, and Harry lashes out at his own son, who he's just taken to the park to have some fun on a weekend. Simultaneously, Vermin is deciding whether or not to go into his childhood home, and he decides against it because there's something deep within him that causes him to be so afraid. He leaves to go and visit Dr. Kafka, but Spider-Man is waiting there for him. Spider-Man is ready to beat Vermin to a pulp, but Vermin manages to get away. And as the issue ends, we see Harry, tormented again by the ghost of Norman Osborn, saying, "Harry, it's time." And now we know that the Green Goblin is bound to return. While Edward Whalen was the eternal child, someone who is beholden to his family dynamics and was never able to grow up, Harry Osborn goes the completely opposite direction. In this case, Harry Osborn goes down the route of premature identification with his father. This is another psychology concept, and it revolves around how sons react to their fathers. Harry Osborn has an unhealthy relationship with Norman. He wasn't really there for him, but his perception of Norman is twisted by who he wishes Norman was. As a result of that, Harry never really became his own person, and instead is trying to fill the role of a father exactly the way that Norman Osborn did it. He's not doing it his own way, he's not reconciled with his own trauma, he's just trying to be Norman Osborn, but it's tearing him apart. We've discussed the concepts of the eternal child and the idea of prematurely identifying with the father, but Peter has an absent father. Yes, he has Uncle Ben, but what's rarely explored in Spider-Man stories is Peter's relationship with his actual father, Richard Parker. DeMatteis gives an interesting explanation as to why Peter holds on to his beliefs so strongly. It's not just because of the death of Uncle Ben, it's also because Peter has a void within him of the absent father. He's never really reconciled with the fact that his parents left him, and even though Ben was like a father to him, Peter's biological father was never in the picture. As a result of that, Peter feels a constant feeling of abandonment, and he also idolizes father-like figures in a way that might be unhealthy. Him being Spider-Man is an amazing thing for so many people, but it has driven people away. It puts him in constant life-threatening danger, and that probably isn't very healthy. In part 3, Shame, we see Harry finally transform back into the Green Goblin. He's in dialogue with the ghost of his father, Norman Osborn, and his perception, his hatred of Peter Parker, Spider-Man. Harry finally decides that his true identity is the Green Goblin, and he ambushes Spider-Man on a rooftop, saying Harry is a fiction, a twisted little lie, and his real name is the Green Goblin. Peter and Harry fight, and Peter is determined to break through to Harry, to prove to him that he's still his best friend, but Harry is hearing none of it. Knocking Peter unconscious and taking advantage of the situation, Harry takes both of their masks off, and says now, this isn't going to be about masks, it's going to be about two men, named Osborn and Parker. So we have three characters, Peter Parker, the Green Goblin, and Vermin. We understand who they are and why they are the way they are, but how do they become who they need to be? To understand that, we first need to get into the mind of a fourth man, the man behind the story, J.M. DeMatteis. J.M. DeMatteis started on the story Moonshadow before moving on to Kraven's Last Hunt, and then an extended run on the Spectacular Spider-Man. His pursuits and his interests are exactly what define the child within. He thinks that writers return to what haunts them, and what J.M. DeMatteis is fascinated by is the concept of meaning and identity. And that's how this story came to be. But it's not what Marvel would usually put out. Well, that's why the Spectacular Spider-Man was such an interesting series. Because there were 4 ongoing series at the time: Amazing Spider-Man, The Adjectiveless Spider-Man, Web of Spider-Man, and Spectacular. Spectacular didn't have to be the premium flagship book. As a result of that, J.M. DeMatteis could get a little bit more experimental with the storytelling, have therapy scenes, and give the characters time to breathe. And that's why The Child Within is so special. It's not asking who survives a no-holds-barred battle, it's asking who survives the wounds within themselves, and how does this transform people or break them down. In Part 4, Guilt, Peter and Vermin come to terms with their relationships with their fathers. Peter, under the effect of hallucinogenic gas from the Green Goblin, has visions of large, looming gravestones, those of Uncle Ben, Richard Parker, and even himself. And Peter's mind is entirely broken. Coming out of this trance, Peter lashes out in anger, but also deeply sadness and terror, swinging through New York with no mask on, blaming himself in fragmented thoughts for the deaths of everybody around him. He arrives, just barely, through the window of Dr. Ashley Kafka's apartment, begging her for help because Peter can't fight this alone. Vermin finally returns to his childhood home, realizing his hatred because of the serious abuse that he suffered at the hands of his father, and he's ready to put his father down for good. While Peter and Vermin are at their lowest, I think we should take a break and talk about why Dr. Kafka is the key to explaining everything about this story. Dr. Ashley Kafka has been the key all along. That name choice wasn't unintentional. It's a specific reference to Franz Kafka, an author who wrote a book titled Metamorphosis. In this story, a man wakes up to find himself transformed into a bug, and in some translations of the book, it specifically says the man woke up and found himself transformed into Vermin. The story has a great interest in exploring the man's relationship with his father, and the cruelty that his father shows him, having seen his son transformed into this beast. That bug explains everything about this story. The title of the book is Metamorphosis. The whole story is about transformation, and how transformation can sometimes be ugly. Not just the process itself, but the things we need to transform as a result of. Peter and his absent father, Harry, and filling the void that Norman left, and Vermin, being the eternal child who finally needs to grow up. That one bug, that one book, explains everything you need to know about Spider-Man going forward. In Part 5, Reckonings, Peter Parker is having a therapy session with Dr. Ashley Kafka. Peter is trapped within his own mind, and the only way to get him out is for Dr. Kafka to deliver a truth that's haunted Spider-Man for years. She says to Peter that the boy inside of him has been chaining him up for too long. Don't let him control you. Nurture him, love him, but be a man. And Peter emerges more determined and more secure in himself than ever. Meanwhile, Vermin is ready to destroy his father, but the child from the beginning begs him not to. And it's then that we realise that the child that Vermin has been following has been himself the whole time. The eternal child within Vermin has been begging him to stop, screaming to break out. And as Vermin hesitates, Spider-Man arrives, and he's about to beat Vermin, but realizes that he has to choose compassion over control. Peter doesn't want to be this angry. He doesn't want to be this violent. He realizes that Vermin really did have a child within himself the whole time. Dr. Kafka was right, and in this case, Peter decides to be the father that he never really had. And this is a concept known as generativity. But the battle isn't yet won, because the Green Goblin arrives, finally determined to make his battle with Spider-Man end for good. Generativity is a concept from Erik Erikson's Stages of Psychosocial Development. It means that Peter has decided to take on the nurturing role that he so desperately needs. It comes from a desire to care for the next generation, and that care is being applied to himself. Instead of holding on to the pain and the trauma of having an absent father figure, he's decided to nurture himself, and that's Spider-Man's transformation. That's Spider-Man really becoming a man for the very first time. He's become his own father figure. Part 6, Into the Dawn, sees our final battle between Peter Parker and Harry Osborn. While Vermin is down and out, and Vermin's father is forced to contend with the monster born of his own abuse, Peter and Harry battle. Peter still tries to get through to Harry, choosing compassion over control, but Harry just isn't having it. And as he's about to end Peter, there is something, a little voice within himself, that tells him not to. He cannot bring himself to end Peter, despite the fact that he sabotaged his own healing. And the Green Goblin flies off, but promising to torment Peter for the rest of his days. And this is what makes Harry the villain of this story. Even though Harry has been through so much trauma, he sabotages himself from becoming the friend that Peter needs, becoming the father that his son needs, becoming the husband that his wife needs. In this way, he fully embraces the mantle of the Green Goblin. And before we reach the final scene of this story, I want to talk about why this story still matters. It's one of those rare Spider-Man stories that deals with trauma in an interesting and mature way. It doesn't treat trauma as something you overcome once. It treats healing as a process, not a single epic victory. The stakes feel even bigger than most of Spider-Man's world-ending cataclysmic stories. This is about an internal battle that threatened to eat these characters up from the inside for years, and it exploded in this particular set of only 6 issues. It matters so much because it proves that Spider-Man is a character who can tell stories that will last a lifetime, stories that connect with you on an individual level and make you consider, what made you who you are, and what do you need to do to become who you need to be? The battle is over, and Dr. Kafka takes Vermin back into her care. Peter visits his parents' grave for one last time. He tells them that he spent so long feeling guilty and responsible for their deaths, but now he can let himself remember them. He can let himself love them, and he can allow himself to grieve. And in his grief, and in his reflection, he's carried off into the sky, and he rides into the dawn.